I've been living most of my life as a shadow artist and I didn't even know it. Hey, what's up? I'm Aisha and I'm a coach and meditation teacher, and I'm currently making my way through the very famous and very beloved The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, and we are on week one, which is called Recovering a Sense of Safety. So today's deep dive is getting into the deep end. So we're talking about shadow artists, what that means, core negative beliefs, and monsters that keep us from creating. And chapter one and week one is basics backhanded slap in the face. There's so much that we dig into that is very profound. And the first thing is this idea around shadow artists. So, what is a shadow artist exactly? A shadow artist is someone who orbits around art, is very inspired by art, and kind of keeps like being in and around art all the time, but does not make any art. One of the distinct differences between a shadow artist and an artist is audacity. So Julia Cameron writes, audacity, not talent, makes one person an artist and another person a shadow artist. And this is like something I relate to so deeply. I didn't even realize that majority of my life, adult life, has been being a shadow artist. One of the questions that comes up for me that is something that also is mentioned in this chapter is how do you know if you're an artist? This scene from The Matrix popped into my head immediately, and it's the scene where Morpheus takes Neo to go see the Oracle for the first time.
You know what that means? It's Latin. Means know thyself. I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. Being the one is just like being in love. No one can tell you you're in love, you just know it. Through and through. Balls to bones.
The other thing about shadow artists is that shadow artists judge themselves very, very harshly. And this is something that I resonate so deeply with is like we are our own worst enemy and our biggest critic. She writes, it takes nurturing to make an artist. Shadow artists didn't receive sufficient nurturing. They blame themselves for not acting fearlessly anyhow. So even though a shadow, if you identify as a shadow artist, you did not get the nutrients and the nourishment that you needed and the support that you needed in your environment, you still blame yourself for not doing the art. And there's this like self-animosity that begins to fester inside when you're blaming yourself. And there's a lot of forgiveness that needs to be had from transitioning to a shadow artist to an artist. A huge chunk of this chapter around safety is also unearthing what are your core negative beliefs. And Julia Honeychild gives you a whole ass few pages listing all these different negative beliefs that she's been able to extract from the students that she's worked with. But here are the top five that I feel like are the ones that really haunt me the most. The first one is it will upset my mother and or father. This is very, very common, especially if you are a child of immigrant parents. There is this story that I've told myself many, many times that my parents sacrificed so much to immigrate to the US and to give us this life and to raise my sister and I that there is no way that I can be an artist because that would be a slap in the face because my parents sacrificed everything to uproot their lives and give us a opportunity and a future in America. And how dare I try to pursue art in any way in creating, um, it's just like dismissing their sacrifice. And this is something really common amongst children of immigrants. The second is I will never have any real money. This is true also culturally. I was told you are either going to be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer, and anything outside of that was not a valid profession or a respectful thing to do, and it was going to bring shame on the family. So the artist box was just always felt out of reach. I will die. This one is very simple, 3 words, I will die. But it's so true. I genuinely felt like choosing art at different points in my life was choosing death and or exile. And I know a lot of people feel that way, that it is gonna kill you to pursue this. But as I've gotten older, what I've learned is that we die because we don't pursue it. We die when we don't create and we don't express our truth and our inner nature. I will feel bad because I don't deserve to be successful. This is a really big one, and that's again the guilt and the shame that comes for me. It's a very culturally rooted thing. And then the last is it's too late. If I haven't become a fully functioning artist yet, I never will. There's this constant feeling that being an artist is not available to me now anymore, um that it is the bus has passed and I missed it. I missed the bus and there's no second or third bus coming, and there's just this deep-rooted fear that I've missed it. So those are some of like those core beliefs that are the ones that are so hooked into my spirit that they just haunt me. They're like ghosts that haunt me continuously. So one of the assignments is to identify 3 creative monsters. So these are essentially enemies that have hindered you from creating. My first monster I named Moby Dick because it is like the white whale that cannot be caught. And so the voice of this monster says to me, "You're not special enough to make anything worth anything." And I was so shocked at how deep this memory was because I haven't thought about this memory since maybe I was 9 or 10 years old. But the first book I ever remember reading or seeing, and I think my father gifted it to me, or it was his book that he bought from a thrift store that he passed on to me, was this book called The 100, a ranking of the most influential persons in the history. So this book had all of the greats, Albert Einstein and Muhammad Ali, and so many like of the most influential people in history. And that was my first experience with book, like with a book, with literature, with reading. And this thing was thick as hell and it was always around. And my dad would always just be like, okay, like read about this person and read about this person and how they accomplished this. And ever since I was 9, or ever since I can remember, probably my earliest memory is this lesson from my father of being great and how the importance that he put on greatness, the importance he put on being someone that moved culture forward, that shaped and impacted the world in positive ways. Like I grew up watching my dad watch the film Gandhi over and over and over again ad nauseum. Like he would finish watching it and then just rewind the VHS tape and then watch it again. The irony is that I loved reading and learning about these great people. And in a lot of ways, like this spark that would emerge when I would be reading about greatness. I would get this like hit of dopamine and hit of inspiration. But what really surprises me when I kind of take a step back and look at what that did is it didn't help propel me forward. It actually paralyzed me. It paralyzed me so much because I, n- from a very young age, had this impossible standard that I held myself to. And I'm subconsciously measuring myself against the 100 most influential people in history. And I could never measure up. I could never measure up to that. And so what it did was not inspire me, but actually just paralyze me with fear that I was never going to do anything miraculous or extraordinary. And it's just really heartbreaking to think about that inner child. And if this is something you can relate to, it's just so heartbreaking to feel like that seed has been planted for so long. So I mean, who knows? It could be at this point like a 400-year-old oak tree of a belief inside of me and a monster that has taken such deep root inside of me. And this is like my first time actually truly like uncovering it and understanding how old this origin of this monster is. My second monster I named Ursula after the very infamous sea witch in The Little Mermaid, who I just feel like Ursula is just such a gnarly bitch name. So like I wanted to make sure this monster had a really good name, and so I named it Ursula. And the voice of this monster says to me, "No one cares. You'll never be one of the greats. You were a never was." So this monster shows up when I've created something and I've actually shared it and put it out into the world. So something that's really interesting is that I have a lot of courage when it comes to my creativity. If I have an idea, I can kind of set things in motion and create it fairly quickly. And I'll put it out very quickly, even before that thought comes. But once I put things out into the world, this monster shows up. Ursula starts to say, like, wow, like nobody actually cares about what you're gonna do. That it doesn't really matter that you made this. No one really cares. It's not moving enough. It's not inspired enough. It's not impactful enough. Sometimes when you create something as an artist, there's this like little hope and wish that it will resonate with the right people. And I've always remained very delusionally hopeful. But this saboteur comes in and it's just like, why bother? Like you never were someone important. What this monster does essentially is just poison everything I make the moment I put it out into the world. And yeah, it's just Ursula is a bitch. Monster number three, I had a hard time naming, but I'll just call her Bengali Auntie because that monster is just judgment and threat. The voice is of the monster is basically just suffocating and trying to muffle my expression. And so the monster is just this monster likes to come out even before I begin something. So if the idea is there, this monster will like hinder me from even pursuing it at the very, very early incubation of this idea or concept that's in my mind. This monster is actually not afraid of being not enough. This monster deep down knows that I am everything, an infinite value, and it tries to muffle that. It tries to keep me small and says like you're being too much. Be smaller. And this monster is basically giving way to playing small in all situations. And the origin of this monster is very deeply culturally rooted. This is coming from getting like hit by my mom when I was being too loud or playful or rambunctious and expressive as a kid. The religious elements of growing up in an Islamic household and going to like mosque and like Quran classes and stuff, like the cultural implications of just feeling restrained and being submissive is just embedded in Bengali, Southeast Asian culture and in Muslim culture for women. And it was relentless. Like the judgment constantly, the critic externally was so, so terrible. Like the aunties are fucking out for blood. Like the aunties would, the second I would walk into someone's home or apartment, they would rip me to shreds. It was like, you're too chubby, you're too fat, you're so pretty, you would look actually so much more attractive if you lost weight. And oh, you're really smart. Oh, you got into this high school. That's amazing. My kid got into this high school that's ranked higher than yours. And this constant battle of in a lot of ways having to perform and be great enough to beat all the other Bengali kids that my mom like wanted to prove to my aunties and stuff that like, oh, my kid is the smartest, my kid is the prettiest, my kid is the most talented, but never too big, never to be too like out there. And so there's this constant thing of like you need to push yourself. You need to like be the best and you need to like stand out, but like pull yourself back. And there was a lot of that like expanding and contracting and there was a lot of tension and discomfort that came from it because I was just constantly criticized and so many people culturally who come from where I grew up can relate to that feeling of just like it's exhausting, that tug of war constantly of wanting to expand and be great, but also struggling very hard to um, express the things that we truly wanted to express. The crazy thing about this part is once you name all three monsters, it's like just acknowledging the monsters under your bed. Like you look under the bed and you see them and you're really like, oh shit, this is really terrifying. And then you name them and then you start to really think about them and how each monster feeds each other. And they're all in this perfect loop to keep you trapped and keep you from creating and keep you from expressing. That ghost and that monster just has unfinished business. And once you name them and confront them, then they are able to kind of go over to the other side. And that's what's wild is I'm already feeling that the acknowledgement is allowing me to shift from that shadow artist spectrum over to the artist spectrum. My favorite part on the assignments this week is that it's not only about facing the monsters, but also Julia's asking you to acknowledge and face your creative champions. So these are the people or the moments that have truly imbued this feeling of safety, of truly being seen as a creative and as an artist. And what really surprised me about this part of just naming the three creative champions was it poured out of me so effortlessly. Like I didn't need any prompting or anything. It just, these memories flooded into my heart so quickly. And I wanted to share my three creative champions. First one is my friend from college, Josh Bookman, who I just was FaceTiming yesterday. Josh is a amazing published writer. And after graduating from college, his first published book included a character that had my name. He called me and told me that I was in his book and that one of the characters was named Aisha and it was spelled exactly like my name, ASA. And it was so emotional then and still emotional now to me because my father named me because when he was a boy, he read a novel with the heroine's name was Aisha, and it was a Bengali novel, and I don't even know the name of the novel, but he said he always remembered that name, and he wanted to have his daughter be named after this heroine. But growing up, like in New York, I did not see and or read anything in school or in the library that had my name in it. I just didn't see myself in literature and see characters like me. And so when Josh told me he was naming a character and I got his physical book in my hand and saw my name on that page, it was so seismic. This feeling of like, wow, like I'm in this book. The fact that I was the inspiration behind those three letters on the page was just magic, was so special. And I felt there's something about even being like in a published book that I just felt like I was forever. I was eternal. Yeah, and I just think about how grateful I felt that he did that and how much it meant to me. I don't even know if he truly understands the magnitude of that moment for me, but it is definitely one of my creative champions. My second creative champion is my acting professor, Adrian Kristansky. My professor in college was such a badass and such an amazing teacher and mentor. One specific memory was that she gave me and gifted me in many ways her personal monologue. All the students were practicing monologues, a traditional monologue and a modern monologue to do for auditions for theater and different acting roles on and off stage. And she gave me her monologue that she used for all her auditions, and she specifically gave it to me, and it felt like she anointed me in that moment. I remember the other students in class feeling very jealous and being like, wow, she like really likes you. She gave you her monologue, like that she wouldn't give to just anyone. And I remember just like trying to be like super modest, but inside being like, whoa, like the professor chose me for this monologue. And I remember anytime I did that monologue in class or during auditions, I felt like so protected and felt like a superhero because it truly was like the honor of a lifetime to be able to have a teacher and a mentor see me in that way and to bestow that on me and trust me with a piece of art that she loved so much and was kind of like her lucky monologue. And I haven't thought about that in so long, and that memory came up as a creative champion, and it's so beautiful to like recall it. The third creative champion is the first time I ever taught meditation live during my meditation teacher training. So I flew into New York for this one weekend because I did most of the training online, and it was my first time teaching live. I was teaching on Zoom most of the time, and I was bone tired. I had a couple of really terrible nights in a row of terrible sleep. I was sleeping on a couch and I was just like staying up really late studying, and I ended up delivering such a powerful and potent meditation class. Like when it was time for me to teach, like I turned it on and treated it like I was doing like a performance of Shakespeare or something. I had a walk-on song. I had spent the whole night crafting the stories I would share during the Dharma talk about Bollywood and love and big gestures. And I just sat there and just owned this space fully and never had felt so relaxed in my life. And it's one of the few times that's after college that I have truly felt like I was being and doing exactly what I was meant to do. And I was just looking out into the audience and all of my fellow trainees who were who were pretending to be like the students in class and stuff were so locked in, and it just felt so powerful. And the goal of that meditation is to generate love. And I felt like throughout the day, other people who were teaching were very much in this in their head of like getting the technique right, making sure like all the steps of the meditation were going to hit. And I was like, I'm going to try something different. I know this meditation. I know the technique. I know the steps. What would happen if I just let everything go and just fully immersed myself in this moment and delivered the message? And the whole room just was vibrating with this like just powerful, powerful love force field. It was incredible. And at the end of it, I felt like I had given so much of myself and my creative power that I just burst into tears. There was this like moment right after the meditation ended where it was completely silent. You could hear a pin drop. And then I just felt like this emotional release had to happen. And I just burst into tears and was wailing. And I had no idea where it was coming from. And I was so embarrassed that it was happening right after I had taught. But it was so cathartic and felt like the only thing I had to do because I felt so happy and so proud and so in the pocket of what I was doing. And everyone just got up and rushed, and we all like were embracing each other while I was on the floor, and everyone was covered in each other's tears and snot. And we created this like beautiful human mandala, and it was just the perfect, perfect moment in design. And that memory will stay rent free in my mind. Yeah, and that memory is just so tethered to what happens when we truly unleash our power and we don't hold ourselves back. And what can be created is otherworldly. And that's what that moment was for me. Another assignment was to name 5 imaginary lives. So creating alternate universes of what you would do if you weren't doing what you're doing now. And I wrote a film director. That one was very, very clear and obvious. A dance, yoga, or somatic movement teacher. So teaching movement in some shape or form, but specifically I was thinking more yoga and pole, mixing a little bit of the spiritual world with that more spicy world. A surfer, which kind of surprised me because I barely know how to swim and I don't know how to surf. But I think in an alternate universe, I would be like a pro surfer and just be one with the ocean. That would be so badass. A coffee shop owner and a flower farmer. What's really cool about this is that all of these already exist in me in some tiny form. Like I help my friend with her floral business as a floral designer and assistant. I explore coffee shops in my free time and like have reminisce with my partner about starting like a coffee cart business. And all of these are part of my life in some sort of way. So I think that's really cool. And it's just a fun exploration to see like to me, like this assignment is just asking you to just completely erase everything you think you know about yourself and just start with a clear canvas. And it's fun to kind of dream up lives in that way. And we can get so stuck in one way of how we see ourselves. So, yeah, if there's a specific imaginary life that excites you, like drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear that. So just a little update on everything. The homework I struggled with the most was being consistent with my morning pages. So, one of my goals this week and beyond is to really become very devoted to that practice and to really hone in on the morning pages. My artist state, I watched a set of films that I've been wanting to watch forever, the Before trilogy, so Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, and Before Midnight. And last night I stayed up all night watching the first two, and I still have the last one before midnight to watch. And what was so beautiful is just that watching these films where there's just two characters, and the movie is just these two characters, and it's happening in real time, and there's no time jumping, and there's no fast cuts or anything happening, but just two people having an intimate conversation throughout a short period of time. And the magic of that, like it made me appreciate so much of those 90s films that do that slow pacing perfectly, and how fast movies are, and how movies have just transformed into this media like quick dopamine thing where watching these before films just make me feel like my nervous system is regulated, and just makes me feel so inspired to create and not set my pace for how everyone else is doing it, but to take my time to tell a story. And that there's so much beauty and mastery in just the simplicity of telling a story about two people meeting spontaneously on a train. And I just absolutely loved those films so much that I couldn't sleep. I had to watch them back to back, and I totally think it's worth it. So, in a nutshell, this week has been about identifying myself as a shadow artist and understanding that in a neutral way, not judging myself for it, but trying to uncover where that all came from through naming those creative monsters and looking under, popping the hood and really investigating and understanding how those monsters have enabled me to become a shadow artist. But like everything in life, nothing is fixed. And that's the beauty, is that even just this first week, it feels like I'm already moving into the space where I want to be. Yeah, and then once you identify and face the monsters, they lose their power. They begin to dissolve in many ways. And what emerges is that deeper belief that is not planted by the saboteurs and the monsters, but that deep belief and that seed of hope that is embedded in each of us, that we are truly infinitely valuable and so powerful beyond measure, and to not be afraid of that, and to know that that is always our home. That is always like the truth of that is always within us at any point, even when we have fallen far from it. And I just want to end with this clip from Ethan Hawke. I've been on this obsession with Ethan Hawke lately with watching his before films, and he's such a champion for creativity. And there's a specific clip that I've seen many, many times about allowing ourselves to really have the permission to be creative. And he says one of my favorite things that I think really ties week one up perfectly. He says, "It's not up to us whether what we do is any good. And if history has taught us anything, the world is an extremely unreliable critic." To me, it's this week is about the permission to be bad, and to not even think of bad as anything, but just the permission to express freely. And whether it's good or bad is not up to me. It's not even up to the world or the people who will judge it. It is something that is just so magical. The matter is so magical that it is has a life of its own and a timeline of its own, and to not be concerned about how it's received or how I perceive my work, but to just create and to express, because human creativity is the thing that the world needs, period. And how lucky we are to just create and to forgive ourselves for not creating when we really, really wanted to. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to share your creative monsters or imaginary life, please drop them in the comments and like and subscribe this video. We are diving into week 2 with much love. I'll see you soon.